Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Uri Burstyn and this is Mr. Pirate D Cat, and we're here to answer a very commonly asked question for you. How much should my cat drink? Now, this is a question that only makes sense if you know why it's important for a cat to drink and what a cat's drinking level entails. So I'm going to go over that in the video before I tell you the answer, because otherwise the answer won't make any sense. But before we get into it, please remember to hit that like and subscribe buttons, squish the bell notification icon, and make sure you share this with all your cat-loving friends. And it's important to remember that while I make my videos very cat-specific, what the information here actually applies to all pets. So if you have a dog or another pet in your life, you might want to keep watching. I also want to thank my sponsor for this video, petlibro Dock Stream, which I'll be talking about a little bit later on. But this is basically a Bluetooth controlled water fountain that actually measures how much water your cat drinks and gives you cool little feedback on an app that shows you their water consumption per day, how it changes. It alerts you when their water is running low, which is very important. We should be topping that water up every day, but it's good to have a warning for when we forget. And it really helps you in monitoring trends in your pet's water intake, which is actually something I'm going to be mentioning later on in the video. So thank you very much for the petlibro Dock Stream for sponsoring this vid. Please go check out their website. I think this is a great tool for both hydrating and monitoring your little cat. And you're going to see why in a moment. Knowing how much your cat should drink is really important, mostly because what you're looking for is excess drinking called polydipsia, which together with excess urination, so polydipsia and polyuria, are some of the most common and obvious symptoms of some of the most common and obvious diseases, specifically kidney disease, diabetes, liver disease, some forms of IBD. All of these can present with increased drinking and increased urination, and as well as other things. So this is actually a really, really useful thing to track in your pet. And to understand how much a cat should drink, you have to understand a little bit about how the average cat gets their water. So cats are little desert animals that are adapted to living in a very low water environment. We think that our house cats originate from little felines that lived along the sides of the Nile and they're all around major river systems in North Africa. And there, they would often go for long periods of time without access to fresh water. So cats actually get a lot of their water from their food. And cats who eat food that's rich in water content, such as little mice or wet cat food, will often have to drink very little. So the first thing you should be aware of is that how much your cat drinks will really be dictated by the water content of their diet. This loops back to another very common question that vets get asked about what's the difference between wet and dry food. And really the difference is moisture content. You know, dry food could be 7 to 8% water by weight, whereas wet food can be anywhere from 50 to like 60 or 70% water by weight. So a cat eating wet food will get a lot of water from their diet, a lot more than a cat eating dry food. And of course, that means that a cat eating wet food will drink less free water than a cat who's eating dry food only. I don't want to get too much in this video into whether cats should be fed wet or dry food. I feel like that's a topic for a totally separate video. However, in my practice, I do recommend that younger cats can be fed whatever the owner wants. But as cats get older, specifically over the age of about 10, I do recommend feeding cats a wet food only diet because A, it improves their hydration, which might be important, or rather it probably isn't important if the cat is young and healthy, but might become important if the cat develops, say, chronic renal insufficiency sometime between vet visits. Being a little bit better hydrated will keep them a little bit protected from the negative effects of this condition. Another adaptation to being a little desert animal, or rather maybe more of a concession to being a little desert animal who relies on mostly getting water from food items, is that cats are very inefficient drinkers. Everybody's seen how cats drink. They lap at water with their tongue, and the little barbs on their tongue trap a little bit of water with each lap. But they may be getting like 1/100th of a teaspoon with each tongue flick. So it takes a cat a long time to take water on board. And this is maybe why water fountains and running water sources are so favored and liked by cats. Anybody who's ever had a cat probably knows that they love drinking from taps, from drips, from water fountains, from water features in your garden. And that might be because it's just more efficient for them to drink water that's kind of falling into their mouth rather than having to lap it up. It might be that they really like kind of fresh, cool water. I mean, who knows? We can't really ask them what their preferences are. I know that Mr. Pirate and I have spent most of our lives living in very cheap student accommodations where there's very often leaky bathroom taps. And so Pirate absolutely loved drinking from leaky taps throughout most of his life. In fact, in my house, there's often you hear this little thump, which is Pirate jumping to the bathtub, and then he'd be sitting there lapping at it. And even when I move into a house with a functioning tap that doesn't leak, I always leave it a little bit open so it drips for him. And in my current place, we don't really have any leaky taps, so I sprinkled my home liberally with water fountains. And he really does show a big preference for drinking from running water sources like water fountains, as many cats do. So drinking from a water fountain actually, I think, helps them increase the daily water intake because drinking from a dish, or from the traditional way by lapping of water is so inefficient. Another interesting thing about cats, again, going back to their desert environment roots, is that they have a relatively low thirst drive. So when a cat feels dehydrated, often rather than drink more water, what they'll do is they'll just concentrate their urine. And they have a fantastic ability to concentrate their urine to really high levels, which of course preserves body water. Great adaptation to surviving in a low water desert environment. But unfortunately, what that means for a cat living at home, especially as they get older, is that, and especially if they develop a health condition which might cause them to pee more, so lose some of that concentration ability in their kidneys, is that they might be more prone to dehydration and they just won't drink as much as they should to make up for the difference, which is probably why cats with, say, kidney disease benefit so much from regular subcutaneous fluid administration, which I talked about extensively in many of my videos, is because even though they're getting dehydrated, they're just relying on their kidneys working harder rather than drinking more to preserve that body water. And when their kidneys aren't working properly, the cat doesn't know it, so they get functionally dehydrated, which puts more strain on the kidneys, and this can lead to a sort of self-perpetuating, sort of worsening health status. So let's review. Cats are desert animals who don't really feel thirsty as much as they should, and are really inefficient drinkers who benefit from a running water source to help them drink more for whatever reason that goes on in their head. We don't really need to know the reason, we just need to know that it works. And hydration, it becomes very important in them, particularly as they age and develop conditions that might lead to increased water loss or where dehydration plays a critical role. So with all that in mind, I think it becomes pretty obvious that monitoring your cat's water intake might be a really useful tool to assess their health status and to spot those health conditions that might cause them to drink and pee more. Traditional methods for monitoring water intake are, frankly speaking, a pain in the butt. I often counsel people to do this at home, and people almost never do because it's kind of annoying, particularly if you have multiple water dishes or multiple pets in a household. And this is, again, kind of a cool thing about this petlibro doc stream, is that it makes tracking your cat's water intake really easy, and it gives you multiple readings on multiple days, which I've never been able to get a client to actually do at home using traditional methods for measuring water intake, which really improves its monitoring capacity. And you have to remember that water intake will vary day to day. I mean, a little bit on diet, as we discussed. It'll vary with activity. It'll vary with ambient temperatures. Hot days, animals will drink more, and in cool days, right? So having those trend lines over time really, really helps. Having data where you can look back over weeks to months in the app and see, oh, well, this is how much my little friends are drinking. This might work better in a single cat household, but it still works in a multi-cat household because average water intake will still vary over time. And then if you really need to know how much your pet is drinking, and this is true whether you're trying to do a 24-hour water measurement or whether you're trying to get like a poop sample from a litter box, is if you haven't lived in a multi-cat household, you may need to isolate one of your cats if you want to gather more data specifically about their health. And when you do this, here's a pro tip. Isolate the healthy cat. So let's say I want to get a 24-hour water measurement on Pirate, and little Claudia, who lives with us, is going to be the one that's going to get moved into a separate room, going to set up with her own water, litter, food, toys, completely happy little environment. But we're going to move Claudia, the healthy cat, into a new environment and leave Mr. Pirate, the fragile little sick cat, in his current environment, so there's minimal disruption. And that will allow us to measure whatever we need to measure, whether it's water intake or something else. It's going to be an accurate measure, and it's also going to minimize stress on our sick little friend. All right, I think I've been teasing you guys enough with all the pertinent surrounding information. So now let's answer the question, how much should your cat actually be drinking per day? Well, the answer, whether it's a cat or a dog, for daily water intake is 2 to 3 milliliters per kilogram per hour. So, for an average 5-kilogram cat, that'll work out to 10 to 15 mils per kilo per hour, or somewhere around 250 to 300 mils per day. But remember, that is total daily water intake, and a lot of that might come from their food. So what you'll actually see on your DocStream app will probably be a lot less than that. And if you're doing subcutaneous fluids, as I do for Mr. Pirate, you'll actually notice that on days when I give him subcutaneous fluid, there's way less water intake on days than I don't, because of course he's really well hydrated and his thirst drive is decreased, and that's okay. But this means that you will not actually see 2 to 3 mils per kilo per hour being drunk from a water source. So does this make water source measurement less useful? Absolutely not. Because like with all monitoring for health, what we really are interested in is not absolute numbers, but trends. And this is where collecting data over weeks to months becomes really valuable. Let's say you measure your cat's total daily water intake once a month. You will know what your average is. And assuming you keep everything else the same, so the temperature in your house is the same, you feed them the same diet, if you suddenly see a trend in the increasing water intake, then that can serve as a legitimate red flag to investigate them, take them to the vet, get a blood test done, get a urine test done, find out what their kidney function is, make sure they don't have diabetes, and that will help you catch health conditions. And it's just like body weight monitoring at home, which I'm a huge fan of. This is another tool that you can have in your toolkit for monitoring your pet's health at home that costs you very, very little to nothing and could potentially save your cat's life or definitely improve your cat's life by leading to an early diagnosis, which is always desirable when you're managing health issues. Water intake can be useful because when there is a clinically relevant problem, the changes usually aren't subtle. We might go from 2 to 3 mils per kilo per day water intake to like 5 or 6, so double or triple normal. And again, while you might not be seeing those numbers exactly, you should see a marked change in the total daily water intake trend over time. So I think it's kind of an exciting new thing we can do. And as vets, I don't think we ever talk about at-home water measurements as a routine measuring tool because, like I said, it's simply too much of a bother for clients to do at home and we get zero compliance on it. But now as our tools evolve, as new products come into market, like this little DocStream Libro water fountain, maybe we can start using them to do cool new things. And this will just add to our arsenal of monitoring parameters at home that'll help you take care of your cat a little bit better. I hope that answers your question about how much your cat should be drinking per day, as well as sort of explains why it's not necessarily something we talk about because it is so difficult to measure accurately. But again, even in the absence of any quantitative measures, you can keep in mind that if you don't change the diet, if it's not a really hot day, if nothing else is any different, but all of a sudden you see your cat peeing more and drinking more than usual, you should probably take them to the vet. And honestly, if you get nothing else out of this video, please just remember that. Increased drinking and increased urination are very significant and common clinical signs that are a really, really good and legitimate reason for a vet visit and some blood work and urinalysis. So I hope you find this video helpful and entertaining. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day, and remember to have fun with your pets.